Welcome to the first installment of Kulture Kids Storytime. In Storytime, I will be reading you all sorts of fun stories that I have cultivated in my daughter's pretty impressive library. These stories span a lot of different areas and really speak to the Black experience. I remember growing up and always wondering why I never saw myself in books that I would read. I wanted to change that narrative for my daughter so that she could grow up and really feel like she had a place in this world and her stories were being told through books. So the first book that I would like to share with you is one that has become one of her absolute favorites. I've read this book more times than I can imagine, and it really puts an Afrocentric spin on a beloved fairy tale. Today we're going to read Hansel and Gretel by Isadora. Once there lived a poor woodcutter who had come upon hard times. He could no longer feed his wife and children. "Tomorrow we will take the children deep in the forest, and there we will leave them," said the children's stepmother. "I cannot do that to my own children," said the man. "If you don't, then all four of us will starve," said the wife, and she gave him no peace until he agreed. Hansel and Gretel had overheard what their stepmother had said. "Don't worry, I know what to do," said Hansel. As soon as the adults fell asleep, Hansel crept outside and filled his pockets with pebbles. The next morning, the stepmother woke Hansel and Gretel. She told them that they were going to collect wood and gave them each a small piece of bread. As they walked, Hansel kept stopping. "What are you doing?" asked his father. "I'm looking at my cat sitting on our roof," Hansel said. "You fool! It is just the morning sun shining on the chimney," his stepmother scolded. But Hansel had not been looking at his cat. He had been dropping pebbles onto the path. When they were deep into the forest, their father said, "You children gather wood, and I will make a fire so you won't freeze." When the fire was lit, the stepmother told the children to wait while she and their father went to cut more wood. Hansel and Gretel ate their bread and waited, but no one came to get them. When it grew dark, Gretel began to cry. "Don't worry," Hansel said. The pebbles Hansel had dropped glistened in the moonlight, and the children followed them home. When their father saw them, he was overjoyed. The stepmother pretended that she was happy too, but secretly, she was pretty angry. Not long afterward, Hansel and Gretel heard the stepmother tell their father, "We again have very little food, so we must be rid of the children." When their parents were asleep, Hansel went to gather pebbles, but this time the door had been locked by the stepmother. In the morning, the stepmother gave Hansel and Gretel even smaller pieces of bread, which Hansel secretly dropped as they walked along the path. Now the children were left even deeper in the forest. Once again they waited by a fire, but no one came to get them. As it grew darker, Gretel began to cry. "Don't worry, the moonlight will shine on the pieces of bread, and we will find our way home," Hansel said. But when they looked for the bread, they realized it had all been eaten by the birds. For 3 days, Hansel and Gretel tried to find their way out of the forest. They were terribly hungry when they came to a little house built entirely from bread with a roof made of cake and windows made of sugar. They began to gobble down pieces of the house when they heard a voice calling from inside. "Nibble, nibble, little mouse. Who is nibbling at my house?" Suddenly, the door opened and out came an old woman. Hansel and Gretel were so frightened that they dropped what they were eating. But the old lady said, "Oh, you dear children, come inside with me and you will be just fine." She served them a delicious meal, and Hansel and Gretel went to sleep thinking they were in heaven. But the woman only pretended to be friendly. She was really a wicked witch who built her sweet house in order to tempt children and capture them for a tasty meal. While Hansel and Gretel slept, the witch looked at them. "They will be a mouthful," she said. In the morning, she grabbed Hansel and locked him in a cage. She ordered Gretel to cook for her brother so she could fatten him up. Every day the witch said to Hansel, "Stick out your finger so I can feel if you are fat enough." But the witch had bad eyes, so Hansel would stick out a little bone that Gretel gave him. The witch wondered why he wasn't getting any fatter. The witch grew hungrier and hungrier, and finally she could wait no longer. She told Gretel to fetch water in which her brother was to be boiled while she made bread. Then she told Gretel to climb inside the oven to see if it was hot enough. But Gretel could see that the witch planned to bake her, so she said, I don't know how. Can you show me?" "Stupid goose! The opening is big enough. I could get in myself," the witch cackled as she stuck her head into the oven. Quickly, Gretel gave the witch a big shove and pushed her all the way inside. While the witch burned, Gretel ran and unlocked Hansel's cage. Hansel and Gretel jumped for joy and filled their pockets with the witch's precious stones and pearls. When they found their way back home, their father rejoiced to see them, for he had not been happy a day since they had been gone. During their time away, their stepmother had died, and now all their cares were at an end, and they lived happily ever after. I hope you enjoyed this rendition of Hansel and Gretel. Please check it out and support the artist who has created such a lovely rendition of a time-old classic. Thanks so much, guys. See you next time.